Communicative Language Teaching and Various Communicative Instruction Techniques. This is a 5-part video series looking at some of the major language teaching methods and approaches. The first video looked at grammar translation, direct method, and audiolingual method. The second video explored the natural approach and TPR. This video will look at communicative language teaching, task-based instruction, cooperative learning, project-based learning, and problem-based learning. All of these are what Lightbound and Spada call Let's Talk. Communicative language teaching, or CLT, came about as research shows students learn just as well from whole language as they do from a step-by-step approach. And by whole language here, I realize in communicative languages it emphasizes speaking, but I mean that a variety of sentence types as well as communicative language does include reading and writing at this point in time anyway in its development. Okay, so in fact, research states that students learn faster when the focus is on the meaning of the sentence rather than on the accuracy of the sentence. So whole language doesn't mean that it shouldn't be modified for comprehensibility. It just means that teachers don't need to worry about whether a student already knows a certain grammar pattern or vocabulary before they use it, because interacting with it, learners will have the chance to comprehend what they need and ignore what they aren't ready to learn at that point. Whole language can also be referred to as a top-down approach, where the new linguistic item is first introduced in meaningful context and then broken down and analyzed and put back together again. Grammar translation method is an example of a bottom-up approach because it starts with explanation and definition of a specific language part and then adds phrases and sentences to it. However, grammar translation seldom got too far up in the process. Today, teachers know that even if they start with a bottom approach, they need to go all the way up to meaningful contextual fluency. Again, CLT is an approach to language learning. So let's look at several instructional techniques related to CLT. Task-based learning is the idea that learners should use the language and concentrate on accomplishing a task instead of trying to memorize grammar or vocabulary. Generally, instructors will introduce situational language chunks, vocabulary and grammar that students might need to complete the task. This is, for the most part of the pre-task. Okay. Then learners are given a fair amount of autonomy in their groups to complete the task. Finally, the whole class is brought back together for a debrief on the task and the language as part of the post-task. These tasks are relatively small and can often be accomplished in 1 or 2 class periods. One offshoot of task-based learning is called cooperative learning. This is similar to task-based, but the emphasis is on each student having a specific role or piece of the task puzzle. When they all come together in their final group, they often change groups at least twice in cooperative learning, everyone shares their information so that the story or task can be completed successfully. For example, any kind of jigsaw activity in the classroom is cooperative learning. This recognizes the social aspect of language, and it is a creative way of making sure everyone participates because they feel needed. Similar to cooperative learning is project-based instruction. More or less, this is when the task is so large that it takes several class periods and becomes a project. In fact, I used to break down my projects over the whole semester so that when each task was put together, it resulted in a final project. Projects can include cooperative learning if the instructor makes sure that each student has their own specific role to play and that everyone will need to contribute to the success of the project. Not every cooperative activity is a project, though. Many instructors rebel against project-based instruction because it takes a fair amount of class time and they feel they can't justify it for just one state standard being met. I have 2 comments here. One is that a good instructor will be able to find ways to incorporate more than one state learning standard or objective into a project. This is easiest when you break it down into smaller tasks. 2 is that research shows a Chomsky effect with the projects. By that I mean that students learn more language and skills from projects than the 1 or 2 objectives the teacher expected at first. Students who use projects in their classroom tend to do better on standardized tests than students who supposedly get direct instruction on objectives designed for the test. Another communicative instructional technique is problem-based instruction. Sometimes this is the same as a project, but not always. For example, learners could come up with ideas for helping their school become more environmentally conscious. So the problem is saving the environment. The language involved would be persuasion. The language style could be format could be through a poster or PowerPoint presentation, or they could create a skit or a TV news interview dramatizing their point. The content is the problem of doing more to save nature. The language is persuasive, and learners will need to use higher order thinking skills like analysis, synthesis, and logic, as well as creativity. Just like projects and other tasks, the problem should be so interesting that learners focus attention on that and forget to worry about how they sound or the grammar. Although accuracy can be promoted through the final product, often these problem-based products are presented to authentic audiences who will then choose the best solution as they perceive it. In this video, we looked at communicative language teaching approach with its emphasis upon comprehensible output, especially speaking. Then we discussed several related teaching techniques: task-based learning, cooperative learning, project-based learning, and problem-based learning.